Welcome to the Yolandi Schoeman show on the Biocast and the first feature of many called the Ecological Engineer. Now, we have so many exciting features lined up in the Ecological Engineering series, so be sure to follow me either on SoundCloud or Stitcher. Now, today's episode, we will dive right into specifically understanding what drives the diffusion of ecotechnology, and specifically for the discussion of this episode, the diffusion of phytotechnological floating treatment wetlands technology in integrated watershed management. Now, our case study is based in the City of Johannesburg in South Africa. But what is integrated watershed management all about? Now, water is possibly our most precious resource. The functioning of biotic organisms and human systems are driven by the quality and the abundance of water. Now, water also has broad ecological and social values that form part of accounting. Now, numerous challenges exist today in the management of water. We've got the current situation where integrated watershed management is also still a relatively new concept. In some cases, efforts towards effective water management have also been unsuccessful because focus has been placed on a single medium, in this case water, rather than on other environmental components such as sediment, air, or biological tissue. So there's definitely have been a failure in addressing the complete and integrated ecosystem concept. Now, in many cases, water management strategies have also failed because they've neglected to incorporate the full range of values and perspectives present among water users or agencies with an interest in water management. Now, water management can only be considered effective when it allows for an adequate, sustainable supply of water over many, many years. It must maintain water quality at levels that meet government standards and other societal water quality objectives, and also protect, very important, the key ecological functions. Now, water management must also allow for sustainable economic development over both the short and the long term. Now, most water management practices up to 1970 only sought to solve a single and a localized problem without considering the associated impacts of such actions on the biophysical, economic, and social elements of larger watershed systems. Now, over the past 20 years, however, we have seen the development of strong global recognition of the fact that the watershed is the best unit for the management of water resources. Now, today, countries situated in every part of the world include water management actions in the context of natural and human systems, integrating watershed and the communities that's located within them. Okay. Now, part of this episode's discussion, integrated watershed management is used in the context of integrated water resource management, and that's purely because of the need for the management of systems, not for the management of system components as islands, but more in terms of the management of systems. Now, there's also reference to integrated water resource management regarded as a process where the environmental, land, and water resources need coordinated planning and management. Now, this process takes into consideration water quality, water use, environmental issues, social issues, the amount of available surface and groundwater, and is henceforth also referred to as integrated. That means combined processes that aims to ensure equitable, sustainable, and efficient water use. Now, an important component of integrated water resource management is definitely the provision of sufficient information concerning water resources, which is required for informed decision-making and proper planning between development planners and water resource managers. Now, the coordination and the cooperation between these institutions, planners, and also individuals is very necessary, where planning takes place that is related to water issues and challenges. Now, the participation of stakeholders in decision-making is a critical aspect in integrated water resource management, and we cannot overlook that, in particularly where decisions are decentralized and where new technologies need to be diffused and taken up. Now, over-centralization of water management, one can argue that it has also failed, and it needs to be replaced with locally responsive systems at the watershed level. Now, the watershed can also be referred to as the boundary of a research responsive system at the watershed level. Now, the watershed as a boundary of a drainage basin can also be referred to as being an integrated system, and the watershed continues to be viewed as the most appropriate unit for water management. Now, there are various research that also supports that, stating that there is no singular and clear water management problem. There's difficulty that can be experienced in focusing public attention on water-related issues and the subsequent need to develop a uniform and centralized water management approach. And this widely endorsed perspective clearly supports water management on a watershed scale, not on a national or a provincial scale. Another important aspect in this episode is also an introduction to water quality. And water is a finite resource, and it does require a lot of conservation and also management. Now, owing to the worsening water quality and quantity that we experience on a daily scale, freshwater ecosystems are among the most degraded ecosystems on the planet. And the coming years will potentially see an increase in freshwater ecosystem deterioration, which will further lead to greater species and habitat losses. Now, coinciding with irreversible species loss is also reduction of economic value of services provided by those critical important freshwater systems. And it becomes impossible to address water quality challenges with the aim of both providing clean water for human use while also preserving the habitat for aquatic species. Now, rivers and streams, lakes and dams, groundwater, coastal zones and vegetated wetlands all form part of the aquatic freshwater infrastructure that provides critical services to the natural environment and its people. Now, as much as 2/3 of terrestrial species use streams, rivers, and their associated riparian corridors at some point in their existence. Now, surface water and surface waters also generally supply approximately half of the world's drinking water supply and about 20% of the world's electricity. Subsequently, with the reliance on flowing water by humanity, anthropogenic activities have further contributed to degrading the quality and the quantity of streams and rivers globally, leading to a further reduction in their ability to provide very valued ecosystem services and ultimately driving species to extinction. Now, large water impoundments such as lakes provide many valuable ecosystem services, such as now, lakes are both sources of water and food. They buffer flood flows and support extensive biodiversity. And indeed, lakes can have high degrees of biodiversity endemism. And furthermore, lakes also support recreation, transportation, other cultural amenities. Now, consequently, lakes are vulnerable to a wide range of water quality threats. That includes salinity, an increase in salinity, that is, temperature changes, and also unnatural fluctuations, and industrial and agricultural chemical contamination with excessive nutrient loads, which ultimately leads to eutrophication, resulting in algae blooms, oxygen concentration depletion, and the occurrence of potential toxic cyanobacteria blooms. Groundwater is also a valuable water provider. It offers surface water recharging services and plays a vital role in regulating ecosystem services. Now, although groundwater typically enjoys greater protection by virtue of its location, that is, it is not totally immune from pollutants. It can take years for a contaminant plume to pollute a groundwater source because of the slow movement of contaminants and subsurface water. However, once groundwater sources are polluted, it is very difficult and very expensive to remediate and rehabilitate. Coastal zones, that's characterized often with a high concentration of industry and population, are frequently plagued by pollution resulting from industrial waste, further population development, dam development, land construction, mangrove conversion, urban waste, coral mining, and wetland canalization. Now, pollution in coastal zones can be detrimental to both freshwater and marine habitats. So, several critical ecosystem services are performed by wetlands. Now, wetlands are characterized by the presence of specific types of emergent vegetation, including the pedology, and may have no open water at all. Now, such wetlands involve the transition between terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. Now, several critical ecosystems are provided by wetlands, such as improving and filtering water quality, moderating and attenuating floodwater flows, providing a natural replenishing function for underlying groundwater, providing goods and services to communities, and supporting extensive biodiversity and recharging underlying aquifers. However, wetlands are becoming every day more and more threatened owing to various anthropogenic activities such as wetland draining and dredging, pollution from mining and manufacturing activities, wetland destruction, channeling, and also wetland modifications. And that's to name only but a few. Now, maintaining these sources of water is critical. Inadequate or unsafe water and the lack of hygiene and sanitation cause approximately 3.1% of all deaths worldwide and 3.7% of disability adjusted life years worldwide. And in addition, inadequate or unsafe water further causes approximately 1.7 million deaths a year. The majority of health threats that are posed by poor water quality is a direct result of microbial contaminants and subsequent disease, especially in developing countries. Now, the current and historical use of chemicals for agricultural and industrial purposes, together with the chemical byproducts of waste management, compromise water quality, ultimately leading to other serious health problems for both humans and wildlife around the world. Now, poor water quality also has an impact on the quantity of water in a number of ways. When water cannot be utilized for bathing, drinking, industry, or agriculture use effectively because of pollution, the amount of water is reduced that is available in a certain area and hence directly impacting on water quality. Thus, the more polluted water we have, the more difficult it is to treat the water to usable standards, and in turn, there is a reduction in the quantity of clean water. Now, apart from the devastating impacts water quality can have on biodiversity and natural ecosystems, vulnerable communities are disproportionately affected by poor water quality. Vulnerable communities include communities living near waterways of compromised qualities that are forced to travel long distances to reach water that is safe and often suffer the most from diseases caused by polluted and unsafe water. Now, marginalized communities that often lack political and economic power are also impacted the most by poor water quality, including the poor in developing and developed countries, the children and the women. Subsequently, the need for adequate water quality to support livelihoods has not been emphasized as much as the need for adequate water quantity. Both water quantity and quality is necessary, however. Polluted water can eliminate or reduce the viability of many livelihoods in communities. Many economic costs are also associated with poor water quality, including health-related costs, impacts on economic activities such as agriculture, tourism, and industrial production, degradation of ecosystem services, and increased water treatment costs, and reduced property values. In the next part, we'll be looking at the water environment in South Africa. Now, South Africa characteristically experiences high, temporally, and spatially variable rainfall. There is a substantial difference between water demand and availability patterns in South Africa, which has resulted in the country being classified as a water-stressed country, with alternating periods of floods and drought accompanied by high evaporation rates. And moreover, the eastern half of the country is wetter than the western half, that further contributes to very unique water supply, demand, and quality challenges. It is also inevitable that South Africa will suffer water shortages in 2020. Now, water resources in South Africa are also facing exponential pressure from population growth, climate change, pollution, and overutilization, and is therefore presently facing a multifaceted water crisis. Now, key concerns and threats include the incongruity between water supply and demand, the theft of water resources, aging and deteriorating water infrastructure, a strangling educational pipeline, and also the ongoing loss of essential skills, failure in management, and the ongoing deterioration of water quality. And in addition, South Africa also faces a multitude of water quality problems particular to acid mine drainage, salinization, eutrophication, and fecal pollution. And these problems are further exacerbated by anthropogenic activities such as agriculture. Now, agriculture activities result in salinity, sedimentation, and the introduction of nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus, all of which contribute to eutrophication. Industries. Now, industrial activities generate effluent that contains a cocktail of toxicants and chemicals. In mining activities can generate leachate, and decant from abandoned and closed mines, which, together with operational mining activities, also contributes to AMD and metal contamination. Urbanization, on the other side, has activities that generate stormwater runoff that contains land-deposited human and animal waste, which can potentially result in fecal contamination of water resources. And then, looking at wastewater treatment works, they generate untreated or partially treated waste effluents that can potentially introduce high level of nutrients and microbial contamination into water resources. Now, if we look at the annual National State of Water Report for the hydrological year 2012-2013, there is a need to strengthen the protection and restorations of natural ecosystems to enhance ecological production capacity and promote pollution control. Now, strategies also need to be developed to prevent, to treat, to remediate water pollution so as to solve water quality problems. Now, there are three strategies of intervention, namely, the first one is pollution can be prevented before entering waterways. Number 2, wastewater can be treated before discharging it. Number 3, the biological integrity of polluted watercourses can be physically restored. Now, various technological tools and approaches are available to address various water quality goals. Non-physical approaches include your economic incentives, pricing, and your legal or regulatory tools. In South Africa, non-physical, legal, or regulatory tools are mostly used to address water quality issues that result from non-parastatals, but there is still a challenge in addressing pollution created by the actions of parastatals. However, there are also other methods to address water quality so as to restore water quality of a particular nature to a certain standard. And such restoring methods can be done by means of eco-hydrological approaches. But how does the water governance picture in South Africa look like? Now, policies applicable to the water sector regulations as part of water governance are formulated by the Department of Water and Sanitation, where the Department of Water and Sanitation plays a dominant role in providing strategies for water sector support. Now, the DWS executes policy regulation strategy provision by operating across the water value chain as an entity in the national government in South Africa. Now, what needs to be emphasized at this point is that DWS does not execute all functions, as some of the functions are assigned constitutionally to sector partners, such as the catchment management agencies. Now, the main legal mechanisms that exist in South Africa for water include the National Water Act, the Water Services Act, and the National Water Resource Strategy 2. Now, a recently promulgated regulatory mechanism is also the National Water Amendment Act, which includes the following key updates. Regulatory impediments that can impact on growth needs to be urgently addressed by the National Development Plan. Now, there are two key aspects that form part of the DWS's primary objectives, namely, decreasing timeframes for license application processes, and 2, the alignment of water license appeal processes so as to include an internal appeal authority, as both the Department of Mineral Resources and Department of Environmental Affairs have internal appeals panels. Now, a time frame for respective authorization processing includes a cumulative period of about 300 days with a further 90 days for internal appeal procedures and the effect given to the one environmental system that reflects the formal agreement between DA, DWS and DMR. Now, effect given to the one environmental system reflects the formal agreement between the DA, the DWS and the DMR. Now, the National Water Amendment Act content further reflects an integrated water use licensing process with aligned internal appeals and shortened timeframes. Now, with the recent legislative developments, it is evident that DWS is aiming to establish and implement a smoother and more expeditious licensing process together with measures that can potentially eradicate problems and challenges that's associated with the Independent Water Tribunal, which is still in reconstitution phase. Now, moreover, statistics indicate that since the promulgation of the National Water Act, 4,000 water use licenses have been successfully issued, amounting in total to 6 billion cubic meters of water being formally allocated. Now, of these 6 billion cubic meters of water, approximately 54% has been allocated for irrigation in the agriculture sector, totaling approximately 314,000 hectares of land. Now, managing water resources, which is in an already complex water sector in South Africa, involves the collaboration and obtaining contributions from various stakeholders that's located at different points in the value chain. Now, in the value chain, there are 8 broadly defined stages. The the basin or the catchment management, abstraction, storage, treatment, distribution, use, wastewater treatment and discharge. Now in South Africa, there is a dedicated institutional structure of the water sector as outlined by the National Water Resource Strategy 2. Now, the institutional structure highlights the roles fulfilled by the water service providers, water services authorities, regional water utilities, catchment management agencies, catchment management forums, and water user associations. Now, catchment management agencies have been established to facilitate specifically water resource management in South Africa. Now, there are 9 catchment management agencies in South Africa. Now, within defined water management agencies, catchment management agencies are responsible for water resource management in the following ways. They are the first port of call for issues relating to water resource management. They are also responsible at the regional or catchment level for delegating water resource management involving local communities and appropriate stakeholders where required. And they also contribute in progressively decentralizing national management to realize that integrated water resource management ethos of the National Water Act. Now, the purpose of catchment management forums is to act as non-statutory agencies or bodies to encourage and democratize water resource management participation and to support catchment management agencies. Now, furthermore, the catchment management forums also provide a means to engage with stakeholders and participating parties on catchment management agency formation and also subsequently to assist with the implementation of catchment management strategies in the catchment. Now, water user associations are defined in the National Water Act as operations to operate at a restricted localized level and in effect be cooperative associations of individual water users who wish to undertake water-related activities for their mutual benefit. Now, municipalities have the mandate and constitutional responsibility within their area of responsibility to regulate water services provision, to ensure access to water and plan water services provision are termed water services authorities. Now, apart from the aforementioned responsibilities, the water services authorities are also responsible for abstracting and discharging water and securing licenses from the DWS. Now, concerning the procurement chain, the water services authorities can either provide services themselves or make use of water services providers that are contracted in. And the number of designated water services authorities amounts to approximately 152, which are included among the 278 municipalities countrywide. Now, looking at water boards, the function of water boards are mainly to provide potable water services in bulk to municipalities. Now, major customers also have other water services institutions that's located in designated water services areas. Now, they are required to be self-funding though, and they are included in the National Government Business Enterprises category and are separate legal entities that have their own governance assets and structures. Now, the board members and chairpersons are appointed by the Minister of Water Affairs. Now, the consolidation of 12 existing water boards to 9 water boards is in the pipeline though, and it's in a move towards establishing regional viable water utilities according to the NWRS2. Now, the function of the regional water utilities will include managing bulk water services infrastructure and also supplying bulk water to water service authorities and water consumers. And the regional water utilities will also be responsible for operating existing regional water resources infrastructure, developing new water resource infrastructure on a regional level, providing support to catchment management agencies and water service authorities, and managing bulk sanitation infrastructure for wastewater treatment. So the governance system in terms of water management is quite complex in South Africa, and that is indeed a mouthful. So this is all that we have for today's episode. Tune in next time as we will be further looking at phytotechnology as a solution to water quality challenges, the adoption of green infrastructure, and we'll also do an introduction to the case study of the floating treatment wetlands as a phytotechnological innovation and ecotechnology in the City of Johannesburg. So I'll catch you next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Yolandi Schoeman Show on the Biocast.